Now we're live.
Now we're really live.
Now we're really live. I was about to keep talking, girl. I was about to go. So another thing that I was going to talk about, but I had to stop. This is what happens when two Capricorns get together. Okay?
That's right.
We just go and go and go. So I got to start off officially. You know, I'm used to being on air, right? I'm not even used to doing it this way. So welcome to Miss Margaret Live. I am back. I know I never really left. I kind of left for a little bit. And I've been talking about doing this season premiere. I know we're going to do a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't do it. It's just been so much stuff going on. I'm sure everybody feels that way. But I was like, we had to have this conversation. Obviously, you know, if you saw my original title of this, it was "The World is Watching." The world is watching. But there's a lot of stuff the world does not see. And when I have conversations with people who are not in Minnesota, well, let me just say this. One, a lot of people will have these thoughts of like, oh, you know, a lot of the movement stopped, you know, after the summertime. People weren't protesting this and that. And I might have to like put some respect on our name every time. Like, no, maybe y'all stopped.
Right.
Y'all, we didn't stop. We've been going. And so there's so many things that have happened even in Minnesota in the past just few hours that, you know, one of the main things, I'm going to introduce our guest in a minute. We've been talking. So why y'all watching already like, well, I know who that is. Y'all already know. But we've been having all these talks about safety, this, safety, that. And one of the things that you're going to hear us talk about is I'm like, we talking all this stuff about safety, but we really want to talk about safety for us and how we're supposed to, you know, feel safe. One of the things I know that was talked about was the increase at some of these press conferences and stuff that are put on by the mayor and stuff like that, an increase in the police and stuff. And I'm like, as if that's supposed to make us feel safe. I'm like, you talking about the same police that just punched that young man in the face yesterday? You talking about that same police that had their knee on that man's neck at the homeless encampment? What was that, last week? Those same police who I'm supposed to trust. There's never a time when I see police out and I feel like I feel safe. Just never. My thought is, what the hell are they gonna do?
Yeah, I pull over if they get behind me. You can go.
Exactly.
Have a blessed day.
Exactly.
And I'll have mine when y'all go around me because I got anxiety.
Right. The I don't even know if I call it feeling the trauma or the tremble, I would say, that goes through my body anytime I'm driving and I see a police officer. I mean, and you could be doing everything right. It's just, I know that it ain't going to take nothing. I've been pulled over. One time I remember a police officer pulled me over from the front. Like, how you do that? They were in the front of me, waited till I went around, and I'm thinking they had pulled over, waited till I went around, and then pulled me. I mean, I was behind them.
I will waste their time. I always carry snacks. I always have a book to read. I always have my laptop. I got my I could use my Wi-Fi from my phone to operate my laptop. I will wait you out.
Yeah.
I will work in my car.
And see, at that time, I wasn't an organizer. So now it be right different. Now I might be right on my live, like, Samantha, Chantel, pull up right now.
Right.
But back then, and that's my whole point with this whole discussion we're going to have tonight. That is my whole point. Was, like I said, back then I didn't know who to even call in that situation.
Me either.
Until this day, it's like now but even with that, who was I going to call? There was nobody. Me alone, black female, and this white officer pulls me over from the front. You know what I mean? So I wanted to come here today and talk about this concept, this theory, and it's sad that I have to word it that way because it feels like a theory. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like it's real. It just feels like whatever. And we'll talk about what we're not talking about. And of course, if there's anyone to talk about pretty much anything, okay? I mean, we can talk about a lot of different subjects here.
We can chop it up.
Okay, but when it came to what we're not talking about, I had to have my good sis, Miss Samantha Pree-Stinson.
Yes, ma'am.
And not only that, I mean, I was telling her earlier, so when I was trying to figure out how I was going to introduce her, I was like, I don't know where to start because it's just, there's so many things. I mean, bad activists So I'm not sure if I can cuss on the channel.
Yeah, I was gonna mind my P's and Q's and say things. It's gonna be a lot more flavorful then because I'm gonna have to say other things. So it's
We
about to get
online,
fun.
we
Yeah, it's
online.
about to get fun.
We know on the airwaves no more. It's a little different. I ain't got the FCC well, maybe they are. I know. In case I know which words I can say, which words I can't. But anyway,
right.
back to putting respect on your name. I was going on thinking about something else. But I was thinking there's so many things. But one of the things, Samantha is obviously, as some of you know, an activist. She's a business owner, small business owner. She is a candidate for the Board of Estimates and Taxation. Did I say it right?
You did.
Bet.
That's right.
And so and one of the things I remember saying, I was talking like a few weeks ago, or maybe months ago, I was talking about, when we talk about safety, we have to talk about money. I mean, you know what I mean? Because when you look at the money that's been put into keeping the Hennepin County Government Center safe, all that barbed wire fencing, my thought was, well, how much money is being put into what we've been asking for, which is funding into community policing and funding into all that type of stuff. So, official welcome to the Miss Margaret Live Show.
Yes, and the kickoff of you being back, which makes this all the more special. And I'm certainly humbled to be the first guest.
It does, and that's so crazy when I think about, when everything happened.
Mm-hmm. Which is how we came together, actually.
That's how we came together.
Formally, having each other's back.
Yep, that is exactly how. Oh, I forgot to mention she's a Capricorn too. Anyway,
just saying.
That's what we do. But yeah, so that is, we came together after I had left my last situation, and I was like messaging you for like a week straight, just every day with everything that was going on, everything I was going through, and you had my back the entire time, and just was always, anytime I sent some long thing, you were always there. So I appreciate you forever for that. And so I know it's interesting. I didn't even think about that, how perfect it is that this is how that lined up. So one of the things I mentioned, we were having basically did the whole interview.
We did. I forgot we weren't live, but
I did it too. But let me ask you this, because I'm not a money person. So let's start here. I'm not a money person, right? And obviously my bank account reflects that. That's another conversation for a different day. I'm trying to get better. And with you running for the Board of Estimates and Taxation, I want to ask you why. Well, I thought it was funny. I was looking at your website and you were saying a lot of people don't know what that is. And I was like, you're right, because I don't. So let's start there. What exactly is that? What do they control or have been doing? And then I kind of want to segue into that, into our conversation that we were talking about. But yeah, so exactly what does that board do? What do they run? How does all that work?
So I'll start by saying that my platform is one of economic justice. That is my jam. That's what I'm talking about. And I want to say that nobody is financially illiterate. We all have to manage whatever, look, the dollar out of 15 cents that we got to make, we all have to manage what we have. And so even though we don't have enough to just do everything we need to do, most people can identify with getting paid and looking at the minimum amount you can put on your lights or your gas before it gets shut off and having to manage your money that way. So people that don't have as much, they do know how to budget their money because that is how they get by. And so I think that's important to just kind of name and start out with. And really my love of money, which isn't because I have a lot of it, and not always because I've been the best at it either, growing up in poverty, but you learn along the way. And my passion really came from starting to work with cooperatives, and doing some work during my time getting my previous employer, the Association for Black Economic Power, back on track to deliver this credit union and some of the other programming that was being worked on. And so that's really where my love of community development, financial institutions, cooperative economics, mutual aid, that's kind of where that really grew into the next level for me, because it was things that I talked about, but I didn't have the language at that time to connect it to kind of all these other things and bring it back to our culture, which is a long culture of cooperative economics within our Black community, whether you're talking about Black Wall Street, Seneca Village, the move bombing that had happened, and that the way over north, it doesn't matter which one of those things you're talking about. The mothers in Oakland, cooperative economics is part of our culture. So in looking at this board of estimate and taxation, um this is a seat of the people in kind of a different way. It's similar to a commission, except for two of us, two of these neighbors that we live with in Minneapolis, will get chosen for these two vacated seats that we have, to really be the voice of the people. Well, the mayor and the council president and the chair of Ways and Means, which accepts funds coming into the city and also approves funds going out. Um, and one representative from the Parks Board commissioners, along with these two people. So these two people are regular, everyday folks that are coming to the table with those who already have the power and influence, not after the fact when they do these public hearings where we know the decisions are already made and it's just a check the box, but ahead of time by having two people there of the people elected specifically to this board to look at the levy, which is really the foundation of what funds all of the things we have to fund. We have to decide what percentage of our dollars that we pay in taxes that we want to go into about 15 different accounts. The main one that most folks are familiar with is our general fund, which is our operating budget for the city. So our $1 million a day it costs to run the city pre-COVID anyway, plus all of the additional programming, people's salaries, all of those types of things. And so how much is there depends on how much we want to give up from our own pockets to fund our priorities. So there's three. This is not a six-figure seat, and I think that's important to know. It's one of the reasons I feel that we've been disenfranchised in a way out of this seat, as non-white people or blue-collar workers, or any other disenfranchised group, because to run a citywide campaign like you're the mayor, for $37 a meeting, which isn't even a minimum wage, because meetings run 3-4 hours longer if it's some sort of budget related hearing, but $37 a meeting, and it's 10 to 12 meetings a year. So it is a lot of work to go into really wanting to be a reflective and representative voice of the people, not personal ideology, not political party, because our money doesn't have those designations. Our money is our money, and we want it well spent so that we can have livable conditions and safety. Money is safety, and we'll get to that. So the responsibilities of this board,
Wait,
one,
hold on. I had to go back.
look,
I'm sorry. I had to go back. Say it again. I had to go back. Money
which part?
is safety. I had to go back. I had
Yes.
to go back. I had to go back because that's the thing. I was trying to.
Economic justice is safety, and that's the
Yeah.
part, that's one of the parts of the conversation that we're having tonight that
Mhm.
they want to leave out. Because when you're not supporting the local economy and businesses are closing, the arts community that's supporting us to get us through this, through music and other things, which is one of like the things that really is holding community together, besides being in community with
And
one
has
another.
narrated this whole movement.
Yes, when
Uh,
they can't create and when they're not in a space to create, when our kids aren't getting equitable educations, when we don't have youth programming, when we're not assisting our elders, when we're not addressing people that are on a fixed income, so no matter how much the minimum wage raises, it's not going to affect their circumstance, when we're refusing to build more public housing, when we're building shelters simply to meet the demand that we create because we allow for the conditions that lead to homelessness to
mhm,
continue,
mhm.
that leads to safety issues, because once you drop all those shoes, what do you have? You have a large amount of people who were already struggling before the pandemic and before the domestic terrorism that happened in our city when these supremacists came in and terrorized us. You add all that together, the trauma of Mr. George Floyd being killed and all the others that came before, and the brutality and the general community violence with drugs and guns and you name it, you
Mhm.
have a large population of people that we forced a concentration of poverty into certain parts of the city that go back to redlining, that go back to those racial covenants, so that large parts of South and North Minneapolis have a larger, specifically 55411, a larger population of concentrated poverty. So when those groups
Mhm.
of people who already weren't making it are literally not making it, you have created conditions where people have nothing to lose.
Mhm.
And these carburetors that are getting stolen off the cars and all this other stuff is going to happen because people are in survival mode. So
Mhm.
money is safety when you think about it like that. So the more they divest from us and continue to make poor decisions with our money, poor decisions in policy that cost us money, putting different amounts on different people's lives as if there's a dollar amount to place on a life. That is what's creating the safety issues. And there's no amount of police officers that are going to correct for that, whether the chief had the 800 that he would like to have or not. And that's just the reality.
Well, and my thing is, in how many situations where you actually have to call the police? Are they proactive in the situation in the first place? I mean, I remember when the whole conversation came up about defunding the police and that whole conversation. And I remember vice president of the city council, Andrew Jenkins, had mentioned the fact of like, well, police usually it's reactionary. You know what I mean? It's not how often in the communities people claim all the crime is you actually see police just in that community anyway. You know what I mean? Like you don't see it. How often are they preventing things from happening? It's usually after the fact. And the thing that like really stuck out to me when you said money is safety, because I remember when Candace Owens. But anyway, I'm not. Now I ain't proving something she said. Well, actually, she proved my point.
I figured as much. Yeah. She usually does prove somebody's point.
She comes back around. You're like, so you realize you just proved exactly what we were talking about. And basically, what she was saying was she didn't feel like there was like racial disparities in the justice system, and that was more of a money thing. And I'm like, how do you not tie that? How do you not tie that? How do you not tie it? It's about money. Well, yeah. So if you have marginalized communities that don't have the money to get the lawyers and get all that type of stuff, how can you separate the two? Yes, it definitely has to do with race. Yes, it definitely has to do with those demographics. Like, what are you talking about? And I could go all about her, but I just was watching it. Like, what are you talking about? Because those particular communities are put in positions they don't have the means to say it's separate. I wanted to ask you, speaking of the things when you talk about money and safety, do you know or have an idea as far as like a comparison to the money that was spent in the regards of all the barbed wire fencing or even like increased police, all these other things that they're talking about public safety in comparison to the money that is said to be allocated or has been talked about being allocated for community policing or the things that we're really asking for? Do you know kind of what those numbers are looking like or what those conversations has that been a conversation?
Well, it's an interesting thing too. One other thing I want to touch on something you said before I answered that was about the reactionary policing. And they keep talking about this de-escalation training, right? The police are de-escalating. De-escalation
Where, Sam?
Look,
where?
De-escalation is a practice. It is not a training.
Right.
Yes, you need to be trained to understand what de-escalation is. And basically it's meeting people where they're at. If somebody's on 1,000, you don't meet them at 1,000. They might be in a mode where they just need to be heard and exhaust that and get it out so you can actually get to how you can actually resolve it without having any enforcement. You have to meet people where they're at. That's really what de-escalation is about. And it requires a lot of listening and a lot of compassion, and it takes time. But it is a practice. So if you are not practicing it, and I can't think of not one example where that has been practiced in recent times or like even in the last 4 years, let's just take that. So you can't take this. They're using all the right words, but there's not action that follows it up. Even down to the mayor says he wants reform. The chief says he wants reform. So you don't see any petitions going around asking for reform. So if that's really what the majority of people want, then why is there no petition? Why is there no campaign to push for reform? And even without that, if that's what you say is the right move to make, why haven't you even reformed? We haven't even seen reforms while you keep saying that that's the priority. And the one reform you made, which was the chief had to get authorization, or the officers had to get authorization from the chief in order to use lethal or less lethal force. There has to be a set of things that they can do without permission, because there is absolutely no way, since every single call, not every single call, the calls that are escalated always result in an arrest or some sort of physical altercation, right? There's no way that the chief could keep up with those calls while also doing his job and going to meetings and be able to authorize all these things. So there has to be, just like an ambulance, a set list of interventions that you can do before you have to ask permission to do these things. So I honestly don't think they're being truthful there. I say that as somebody who served in the Army and was also a paramedic. That's why I have that lens of why I'm seeing it that way. So when it comes down to talking about that part, we're not even there because there's no agreement. Council President Bender actually made some tweets about it and has been tweeting about the fact that she's been talking more about how policy works. And you have department heads that,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Sam. We late as hell on that conversation.
Way late. So we're not even dead. We're not even down to designating dollars and talking about dollars, because we haven't even talked about cents, and there isn't any agreement. And the petitions that are moving forward at this point in time, the Charter Commission is trying to stop. And they're literally trying to stop the council from doing their job and take some of their authority away.
Which
that
one
is the current circumstance.
Stop exactly that the council is trying to do? What are they trying to stop?
So the council is arguing with the mayor about who has the power to do what. This goes back to 2018. The council
talk about it, Sam, because I know, at the time you were working. Your face. We can talk about it.
I was working at the city. I was a city employee, and I was a senior policy advisor for Councilmember Cunningham. And I was in all the meetings, and I was in all the business, and I was his policy advisor. So I'm in all of these meetings, and the department heads don't want to do what the council members want to do, and they have some ability and power because they're actually the ones that create the legislation. People don't realize that. My job wasn't to create the language. The city departments decide how they want that programming to run and how the dollars are going to work. They do all that in there, and then it goes to the city attorney's office that comes up with the legal lingo. The council members come up with the idea.
Right.
And they got the support from the community or an organization or whatever it is. So she's pointing that out to say the way that the system works, people can't really do their job. And then the mayor is the one that appoints the heads of the departments. They're not hired, right? Like any other city employee is. So of course they're following the direction of the mayor, because if they don't, they're gonna lose their job. He can unappoint someone at any given time, just like the council members can. So the fact that they can't get along enough to figure this out so that we can move forward with the things that we want to see, at least to put it to the ballot so we can all decide, which is the right thing to do.
Right.
We're stuck in limbo because these grown people that make 6 figures a year can't figure out how to get along and get this work done. And in the meantime, people are dying, people are frustrated, and they are losing their patience. And there we go with the safety conditions again, because we prepared downtown for a militarized zone, and we are creating a dynamic where things could blow in a different direction with the wind when people have hit their breaking point, and they are at their breaking point while sitting on a powder keg of trauma. And these people play games because they can't agree and get along, and everybody's trying to outpower everybody else.
Right. And a couple of things. I've heard you mention this, and I know I've said this myself. Three different things. One, I've said this before, and people are probably gonna be like, "We're tired of hearing you say the same." Well, no, you're not. If you tune in, you like me saying the same thing. So anyway, I've talked about so many times before. To me, some of the things that need to be done are just so simple. Like going back to the thing about trusting the officers that we have now, or them talking about, let's say after they said they have, like you were talking about the de-escalation stuff, or they had, what was it about? Basically that, like, or having to report every time these things happen, or whatever. My thing is, what the hell does that do with the police that are still there? Like, to me, shouldn't it be getting them out? Like, I want to see a list of all the officers in all the different precincts. And I know I could look stuff up too, right? But I want to see a full list of all the ones that have multiple complaints, which is most of them. So what are we doing about them? I don't want to talk about banning of chokeholds or what have you. I don't want to talk about now this. What about them who are still there? Why are we not starting there? Like, to me, it's like simple things of like getting down to the root of a simple, I should say, idea But like you said, but it's not happening.
And we're paying out lawsuits. Every time they do a thing and you look at the record, we're paying them off.
Right.
And that brings up another question, right? Isn't that what people that are affluent do? They pay their way out of trouble. When you're rich and you go to jail, you can afford to pay your bail, while somebody who lives in poverty can't afford it. So they have to sit there and wait while the other people get to get out. We're literally doing the same thing as a city, but maybe like slightly in reverse, in that we reward bad behavior by paying people off.
Mm-hmm.
And then those people get to keep their job, and there's no repercussions.
Right.
There's no established threshold.
Mm-hmm.
Your office is your squad car in our streets. If we went into our office every day and we didn't do our job, and we were putting knees on people's neck and beating their kids up when they came to visit them at the office, right? Because the street is the office, as I just said.
You'd be fired.
They would be fired.
Mm-hmm. Any other job.
But literally a position that is supposed to protect the sanctity of life and serve the residents of the city are over policing, especially in certain zip codes and areas. And, as we've seen nationally, even with disastrous consequences. And there's a reason why we're the second worst state for Black people. And there's a reason that we're the fourth city for them, because we intentionally create the conditions to make it that way. And then we gaslight the victims and those that are have to navigate these systems and deal with this oppression. And then we criminalize them and say it's their fault.
Yeah.
And then we put up barbed wire and all these interventions saying it's in our best interest. They don't tell us that there's a credible threat. They never mention it in the weekly updates.
No.
And then they bring in more enforcement. Now we got the U.S. Attorney's Office involved, and the FBI and the ATF and the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office and MPD. And that also includes their mutual aid agreements with other cities, where, like, if we can't handle our situations, then y'all come in, and if same happens for you, we do it for you. So they have mutual aid agreements all the way out to second ring suburbs. They say they're shutting down George Floyd Square. Well, like we had talked about earlier, every little thing that we do that has anything to do with George Floyd, immediately they're worried it's going to affect the jury. Right. So given that you brought in all these resources, clearly you've already identified people through the surveillance of the drones and the helicopters and whatever it is you think that you've pinned on people to have a reason to go in with that much force, right? To take care of a problem that you're describing as George Floyd Square, when really it's gang members that have been on that corner for decades and nobody's done anything about them. When? Before the trial, which is Monday starting, during the trial, or afterward? Is there any thought to that? And when these questions get brought up, again, they have circular conversations where they repeat the same talking points and they say certain things with no description of how those things are going to be accomplished and what it's going to look like and what we, the public, can expect, let alone giving us any safety guidance on how we can all stay safe and look out for one another.
Right. Exactly. And you know, one of the things, you saw my face when you mentioned the FBI and stuff. I was like,
right.
Because my whole thing, FBI, I'm trying to figure out what happened to all of those white supremacists. And I'm not talking about the ones that came from Wisconsin. I'm talking about the ones that lived here. Okay. Because you don't go to Como Park if you're not from here.
Exactly.
Clear. You don't go to Como Park. You're not hitting Roseville. You're not hitting all of these places that these folks. No, that's an inside job. And my whole thing is, so what happened to all those people that you caught, or especially the ones that you let go? Because apparently all the police were out of shape that week when they was catching all these white supremacists, and somehow they all escaped. What about all of them? What are you doing about them? I remember when I asked Keith Ellison, Attorney General Keith Ellison, this past summer about that. So whatever happened to all those people, when you guys put their pictures on the website and stuff like that, were you able to find any links to white supremacist groups? And it was the way he answered it. He was like, no, we haven't. I was like, that's a lie. I didn't have time to push it in that interview. I said, that's a lie. That's a lie. You're not telling me something because the way you answered it. It was like, no. Like, there was just no further. So that's a lot. So what are we supposed to do? Because, see, my thing is, you don't think those people are standing back and standing by? You don't think that okay, now maybe it's just me. Let me ask you this. Have you not felt a shift in the universe? Because I know I've felt a shift in the universe, not just with the trial. I'm talking about when you look at what happened in Atlanta when you look at, and then what happened in Denver, that's not some coincidence. You got to look at who that happened to.
Yeah.
You had both white supremacists coming in there. You had shooting up this spa. We had Asian women working at, completely targeted, obviously. Then you have what happened at the grocery store. And one of the things, the theories that came up was that the guy, the mass shooter, was Muslim. Now, if you see, he's like, I think he's like a young white guy. And I thought that that was really interesting because I saw it was Representative Ilhan Omar who put that up. Like it was some random person who said, but I thought it was so interesting. Like, oh, how convenient. Like, you know what I mean? How convenient that's what you put. And to me, it's like, are we not noticing you got all these groups that are being targeted, the same groups that 45, his main people that he attacked. And what do you think his followers, what do you think they were going to do?
And remember when they blew up the mosque in Bloomington?
Yeah, that was right? One. I knew I had another one. I was like, you had
mosque in Bloomington.
All of that.
Whole another incident. We don't see the same coverage, the reactions.
No.
You know, my husband brought up a good point. When they put out information, right, when the beginning of something is happening, there's limited information. Yeah. But it's well known enough that you have to say something. So they make their initial statements. Oftentimes there's new information found, or the original information they put out was proven wrong. The original information they put out that's wrong or that needs additional follow-up goes on the front page. The new information is on page 6, right? So we're creating a narrative and we're pushing it out front and center. But then when the actual information comes in, and depending on who's involved, what ends up going up next is very, very different. And that also drives the narrative, which is a safety issue. And we're not talking about the safety issues that journalists are creating on these more mainstream journalists, whether it's Alpha News, Fox News, even CNN and other sources. They all do the same thing. You know, Cuomo saying he's not going to interview his brother on these allegations, you know, just all of this hypocrisy and the way that they move. And, you know, when it's personal to them, it's very different versus when it's some other group that they're not attached to. And they're already an easy target because they target Muslims because of 9/11, and they target people that are Asian for whatever made up stupid reasons they make up for that. Like the list goes on. And so that also adds to the safety issue, which is why we are blessed to have the very large local journalist community that we have, so that we can get our information. A lot of times there's no commentary. You're just showing what's actually happening, boots on the ground. You'll talk to some people, but it's mainly just showing what's real and capturing all of it and not inserting a bunch of opinion. You'll ask other people, sure, about what they're feeling about what's actually being seen. And we're blessed to have, like, I could go on for the rest of the time we're together and talk about the names of our local journalists, but big up to them.
Now we have we have people ask me, like, well, who should I follow besides you? You know, I'm like, yeah, me first.
Nothing wrong with that. First choice journalist, I'll say it.
But I mean, before there wasn't like a list of people that I could name, especially women. Women. So now we have that. But it's all these things that, like you said, even when we go back to before what happened in Atlanta, if people had gave a damn when they should have, we would have been looking at this more seriously last March when it was first talked about that Asians were being targeted, that they're being discriminated against. They couldn't. I remember talking to someone who couldn't go into a hotel. Him and his friend got they won't even come into the hotel because they were saying that, oh, you're bringing COVID, or all those things like that. And a lot of times we, even as the Black community, okay, so on top about it, a lot of times, I don't even say Black marginalized communities, what have you. We look at things and you might be like, oh, that's just crazy, like white folks. Like, you know what I mean? Like all that. Well, those crazy white folks are the Kyle Rittenhouses. They're the same ones go up in the grocery store, the same ones going up in the spa. We can't just, oh, that's just crazy, whatever. No. Because they're also the ones who can do that, get off on it, and go right back off and do it again. So we can't brush things out. But we also know that we had said way before George Floyd was murdered that we knew that these groups were out here. We saw them. But because they're just out there just, expressing their rights or this and this and that, it was okay. And then we have these situations And we see what happens. They're asking us to trust the same police that will sit there and buy them Burger King after shooting.
Yeah. Timothy McVeigh, right? The Oklahoma bombing, Columbine, Sandy Hook. So it's children as well. It's everybody. And the fact that people haven't realized that it's everybody. When I say solidarity, I'm not talking about everybody hugging and saying we're unified and we're one Minnesota. That is not what I'm talking about.
Right.
When I'm talking about solidarity, I'm really talking about strength in numbers. It's not a poverty competition or the oppression Olympics about who has bigger problems. We all have our problems. We're all organizing around them in our individual communities and coalitions. However, when it comes to who's being affected largely and broadly, it is a large group of people that could be working in coalition with one another, because when you look at the numbers, they always say the 1%, the 1%. Well, there's 99% of us then by that logic. So if the 99% of people got together, the 1%,
who are they at that point?
So they have to realize the ways in which journalism, policing, all of these different things tie into the grand plan of the divisiveness, that they don't want us to work together. It's clear, it's obvious. There's signs and symptoms and signals all over the place if you're willing to open your eyes and look. And so when I'm talking about solidarity, that's what I'm talking about. And so if everybody's trying to get what they want, the only way to get there is to be in solidarity with one another, and we got to show up like it's happening to us, because then it happens to us and we're valid to be crying and be upset and asking for people to show up for us. But it is exhausting when you want people to show up for you but you don't show up for them. So you have to just start doing it and organically start to build the trust to be able to be in some sort of solidarity for the greater purpose that there's 99% of us that are being affected by 1% of people. So if you're really about it and you're really in these streets, right, and you really care about Black lives and Native lives and all, if you're in all lives, right, if you really believe in all of those things, and for the Bible thumpers, know thy neighbor, love thy neighbor, right? How can you love your neighbor if you don't know your neighbor? So people need to stop being hypocritical. They need to step into being uncomfortable and realize that their community is not scary. And the word activist, the word organizer, the word reparations, none of these words are scary words. They are processes, they are programs, they are policies. And if people would stop reading headlines as if that's the news and actually read what's in there and get out of their vacuum to listen to all kinds of perspectives, they might understand that what's being presented is actually to their benefit and stop voting against their own interests, which is a big problem that we have on top of voter suppression.
Right. Oh, God. And we heard about, what just happened in Georgia.
And that's safety, right? When you can't vote and only a conservative type is going to get into office, that's a safety issue, because we know what they do when they get in there. They continue to create oppressive policy. Right. So it's all safety. It's all safety.
And that's what I think, what I'm seeing is, did we lose Samantha? Samantha, you still there?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see you. It's just there we go. When we talk about, with safety and everything like that, you were saying it's a lot of those words they're afraid of is why we can't get stuff done. I look at just when I was talking about the shift that I feel like I'm seeing. It's all the things you got to understand. Like a lot of these folks have lost their leader, right? They don't know what to do, and I have no idea what communications are coming from that former office of the president thing. I know you and you were like the only person I saw mention that, and I was,
people don't check.
We're not talking about this. Like, why aren't people? But it's like, it's so right. Everything, it just feels like the calm before the storm, basically. And you're saying with having this whole militarized zone, all that adds to that, all that tension. It's like I see people who say this just feels like a setup, and I'm like, I could absolutely see why you feel that way, And I want to touch on one thing, and then just kind of segue into something else. But when you talked about solidarity, that was talked about a lot when I went to the rally. It's like, you were there. We just didn't see each other.
I think I might have spoke on it even, but yes, we missed each other. No, we missed each other, I think.
Yeah. And that was the thing that we talked about was solidarity. You know what I mean? And just, I remember with Mel Reeves saying, and you heard this saying so many times, like, you know, we're like this, but when we all come together, we're this, and imagine what that would look like. And I feel like, at what point in time are we going to get it? I will not lie. And some people might be like, felt some type of way that I was even at the rally because of the history, you know, and the tension between Black and Asian communities. I'm like, that's why I'm here.
Right.
Why? Because the system is what did that. The system is what made us think, oh, they're this, like they call type of cherished minority and all that type of stuff. That's where all that comes from. It to me it's a whole obvious plot so that we don't do this, so that we stay like this. And I'm like, when are we gonna get that? Because can you imagine, all that against the 1%? Who the hell are they? Who are they? You know, even at that point. But I wanted to go into just a couple more things quickly here. There's so many things we could talk about.
I know.
I'm gonna have to have a part 2. But so one of the things I wanted to talk about is we got to go back before we're gonna give you guys some stuff, some like best practices stuff. Because like we said, a lot of these public hearings, they're not talking about what you can do to be or think maybe you shouldn't do or what have you. So we're gonna talk about that. I wanted to talk. I'm trying to figure out which way to go. Let's briefly get into what happened yesterday. Let's get into that because I wasn't out there at the press conference, but I think you were able to make it out there. So you can talk more about it than I can. Now, I'm going to see something. Hold on. I'm going to see if I can get this video. If I can't, it's not worth messing up the screen. But what we're talking about, the incident yesterday, was it in Minneapolis? It was in Minneapolis, right?
It was in Minneapolis, and there were the Hennepin County sheriffs in like half riot gear, meaning they had their helmets and their flak vest on, and there was also Robbinsdale police that were there. But the incident happened in Minneapolis proper.
Okay. I was like, yeah, I thought that was over in the area. Okay, hold on one second. I just had to make sure I still have the video up. I'm going to try to show this video quick because this will show you what we're about to talk about, and it's important. If not, we can describe it. But I would prefer, but it's a video that's on Facebook, so sometimes it gets a little weird, with the streaming and stuff. So we're going to try. Can you see it on your? Oh wait, hold on. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to try to play this, y'all. We'll just see if it works. It might be kind of choppy.
Bro, how y'all gonna stop us from going down the street? The fuck y'all sound crazy as hell. Hey, stop! Oh, what the fuck? Hey! This is police brutality, bro. Stop, step back, guys, step back. Hey, stop! Why did you hit him? Y'all cannot do that shit, bro. Y'all cannot do that. Y'all cannot do that shit, bro. That shit bogus as hell, bro. No, don't do that. Man, y'all bogus as hell. Don't do that. Come here, man. Come here. Come on. Come on, babe. Come here. Stop your ass, man. Please, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get you out the way. Okay, cool. All right. Don't even worry about it. Hey, can y'all please stop?
Okay. All right. Can y'all hear me?
Okay,
sorry. It froze on my end, so I don't know if it's still frozen. I got to be out of this thing. But anyway, can you see me? Am I frozen too?
If you get out of share mode, no, you're not frozen. Yeah, I see you.
Okay, sorry. I don't know how to do this thing. Okay, there we go. Right.
So the frame up to that is that they were looking for a suspect, which they had already caught, and that was already handled. And these young people, mostly kids, some of them might have been young adults, right? Like 17, 18, but mostly kids. You can hear some of them, like their voice has not changed yet. You hear them screaming.
Right,
They're playing outside, hanging out, doing their thing. And the one that was recording was just walking by, minding his business. He just so happens to be the son of a local activist on the north side. And I don't want to name her because I don't have her permission to do it. But it is a friend, and that is her son.
Okay.
Not an adult. And so the police start harassing them and trying to prevent them from walking down the street, which is not cordoned, it's not taped off. They were just walking down the street and they don't know any of this context is going on. And then what you see is the police beating the hell out of some kids. No reason for why they're doing it, not saying if they're detaining them, and if they are, why, not what crime they committed. They just start wailing and punching repeatedly, and allegedly once again had their knee on someone, whether on their neck or their back or their spine, were using their body weight to subdue somebody without any due process of the things that they're supposed to explain.
While this trial is going on.
Which
and then we just had the situation that happened. What was that? Just last week? Was that just last week at the encampment?
Yes.
That was just last week at the encampment. And one of the things too, because I know that you've worked with the encampments over in Minneapolis and stuff like that. I saw someone say something just straight up stupid and ignorant. Oh wait, Margaret.
I think those two words will pass.
No, because I was trying to decide if I was gonna say something.
You see my faces I'm making because
you probably know what I'm about to say. I'm gonna say this. I've seen people make comments like, "Oh, I need to see the full video." I'm talking about the homeless encampment one.
Yep. Many of which are Black people that say that they organize and do community work on the north side. I'll leave it at that. If you follow local politics within that area, then you know exactly who I'm talking about. And that's not to diminish their work in any way, shape, or form. But I'm not going to pretend as if these harmful dynamics don't happen. And I'm also not going to pretend that they live in Minneapolis, because they don't. So I said what I said.
And one of the reasons why I had to bring it up, because you saw, I said, And the problem with it was the same things that I saw people under Fox, under KSTP, those same folks saying that. You know what I mean? But that's another conversation for a different thing. But the point was, like, I was like, you can speak to what goes on. You know, I have volunteered only at 3 of the evictions in St. Paul, right? And we were heavy with it was a whole system to figure out. So when these encampments happen, you know what I mean? Learning what your rights are. For me, I volunteered as a documenter because I was like, I knew I could use my media credentials. If you kind of mess with me, I could be like, oh, I'm with such and such, you know? So I know that these things happen, but it was just like for people to say, oh, I need to see this, as if we don't know these things happen. We know that a lot of times when these evictions happen or what have you, the police come there and they're roughhousing people, assaulting people, all that type of stuff. It just usually, or a lot of times, it doesn't get caught on tape, and people aren't able to see it. But I would want to ask you from your experience, because you could speak to how it is a lot of times, you know, at these encampments, just to dispel any rumors that it's not like that. What have your experiences been while you've been, you know, working at these encampments and stuff?
It's a well-oiled system. There's a Minneapolis Supply Depot who accepts donations, and it is a warehouse, and they take orders from the volunteers of the supplies, hygiene, and things that they need, and they pick it up and they take it to the encampments that they're, you know, in service to and volunteering. Transportation, laundry being washed, food being provided through various community folks that are doing that work. And so it's very organized.
Right.
And when it comes to, you know, potential dangers, regardless of who it's, you know, possibly coming from, they also have a well-oiled system with that. Legal observers, people to be liaisons to actually speak to the police so that everybody doesn't have to. Letting them know, you know, the situation and what they're actively doing and what they're asking for or who they want to speak to, like almost like a hostage negotiation, quite frankly. If you've ever watched TV, you've seen that, you know.
Yeah.
And they're democratically ran with the folks that live there. And they make those decisions together about what they want to do, because they've been living in an intentional community, which is not illegal. We actually have ordinance that supports that.
Right.
And they have their list of demands, which aren't out of the ordinary. They're pretty clear that they will leave, but they want to know where they can go.
Right.
And so when police arrive, it's less about, you'll hear it be referred to as encampment defense. But it's not really that. It's just making sure that the unhoused people themselves don't have to be additionally traumatized, that they have support there if they need to move and pack up their belongings and do it in a way that's dignified and organized, and to organize the things that I said, right? Food moving, laundry service moving, all of these other things. And so that's really what they're there for, but also to make sure that nobody gets hurt. And I think you and I talked about this earlier when we were fake living.
We forgot we weren't online.
We really did, because we got into it. But one of the things that I brought up was that this isn't World Star, right? These are people, and so far folks that have captured the entirety of an event, it is important to name that they have been Black youth, somebody's child, right? That is seeing this, who doesn't know even the words to express what they're seeing. They could have issues articulating it, not because they're not intelligent, but because that is a lot for somebody at that age to go through.
Yeah.
And as somebody who was 10 years old, because I'm a native of Los Angeles, born and raised there, I lived through the LA riots. And so I have a lens on how that made me feel at 10 years old, right? Living in the hood while this is happening, kind of like a little bit similar to what's happening now. You're putting community in the position where they're scared to be on the other side of the camera. And they never know, because it's been increasing of not just death, but serious bodily harm, right? And emotional trauma that does have a physical response, right? A somatic body response when you experience it. And people are more and more feeling the urge that they need to intervene and take a stand and stand in between the police and the whatever the situation is, to prevent another death or serious injury, because they are scared. It's less about being fed up, honestly. The adrenaline, when you're seeing somebody in a car accident or a building on fire, adrenaline will cause you to react, because it is human nature to want to protect life.
Yeah.
And so we are creating a safety issue by continuing to allow, because there's been no reforms, no real changes, and the few that they made have already been violated, like in the case of Dalal Eid and his murder. And it's escalating people's fear, and elevating the tension, and re-traumatizing people in that way. And at some point, and we've seen this already in both of these videos, you see that hesitancy of some people trying to do a thing and other people trying to stop them, and really people feeling very paralyzed about what's the right thing to do, because you walk around with survivor's guilt when you're present when somebody is killed. And that carries with you, especially when you are a young adult or a youth. And that to me is one of the more serious issues that needs to be talked about and addressed, in talking about how do we keep each other safe, and how do we talk about safety, even internet safety, just a lot of different things that people don't think about, especially because more people are they're seeing things through a different lens now than what they saw before. And they're showing up to community events, and they want to hear what their fellow neighbors are saying. And there's more and more people getting involved every day that aren't used to these types of things, that an organizer or activist or just somebody who's really embedded in community would just instinctively know. So that's causing safety issues as well by not addressing this. And we're really only providing anything to our business owners. Not saying they don't deserve it, and that certainly we need our businesses to be open, because we see what happens when they burn down and we don't have access, right? We do community supply drives, and we end up having to do all of these things, which is the just thing to do. But that's the position it leaves us in. So certainly nobody's suggesting that somebody's livelihood shouldn't be protected. But when we're talking about government buildings and that kind of a thing, it's a sensitive subject, because it makes people feel like they have been abandoned. And whether you're white, Black, Muslim, Christian, in the LGBTQIA community, however and wherever you identify, people largely feel abandoned, and they don't feel safe. And a lot of that is because they don't feel informed, and they don't feel engaged, and don't feel heard, and they don't feel seen. They largely feel erased.
And when you said that feeling to of feeling abandoned. So I'm gonna take it back. Now I know y'all probably like, when they gonna give us some like tips and stuff. We getting there. There's a lot we gotta talk about.
The shift you talked about, right?
Yeah, it's that shift. And I feel like we have to prepare for that, and we can't pretend like it's not happening or that it's not coming. You know, and for a lot of people, it's a scary thing. That's why they're not having these conversations, right? Like, they're scared of the conversations. You don't want to think of that at that point. But one thing we know is that if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And I look back at, I'll never forget when back in May, and I went back to a status I had posted the December before, and 45 had come in time. I remember he came
to the Target Center.
Right. I remember he hadn't done that before. I remember going then, like, it's about to be some. And then, we got Crow's happy ass standing up there next to him, matching the color of his t-shirt. So I'm like, what do we think is going to happen? But I remember,
I know exactly what you meant.
Whew. So I'm like, we said it back then, because that was when we were seeing little like spottings here and there, and they were walking around with the big guns back then and the flags, but we didn't know what it was and stuff like that. But I remember putting up a status saying, basically, like, I remember saying something like, to all marginalized communities, like, we need to get ready, or stay ready so we have to get ready, or whatever the case. It was just a feeling I had. I didn't know what, it was just a feeling that I had of like, we need to be prepared. And so I wanted to, before we talk about kind of now, but going back to that point in time when George Floyd was killed, no one obviously imagined a lot of parts of that, right? As far as the riots and everything like that. I hate even calling it that. But I think after that first day or so, no one expected a lot of the stuff that was happening. When we talk about communities feeling abandoned, and you had all of those things of the Black Lives Matter signs, or houses with the Black Lives Matter signs being targeted by, whether it was letters, hate letters, whatever. You had communities becoming their own police, because they were being targeted and were experiencing the terrorism from a lot of these white folks that, our state loved to say they weren't from here. No, they were from here. A lot of them were here. We talked about that earlier. None of us, I think, were really expecting that part of it. And so, there was a lot of conversations. No, they weren't having enough conversations about how the neighborhoods were individually being affected. I remember, and see, we weren't Facebook friends at that time. So I remember then, that was when Miss Margaret Live, my fan page, kind of turned into this like 24/7 news. I'm not sure if it was.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Me too. I would think I was like, anytime a thing was happening that I could document, because I could tell, talking about the shift, it felt like this was something that I needed to document. Yeah.
And I think that's what we all realized. Like, and so we were up 24 hours. I remember, particularly a couple nights, 24 hours. I mean, I'd be on the phone, people calling me. I'm hiding under my truck because we just saw this, behind my garage. We just saw this truck come by where they didn't have license plates. I was sending money to people to go and get hotel rooms. We were reporting all these sightings and all this stuff, because who the hell was I supposed to call? I called Walt, I don't know how many times that night. I remember, I was surprised he didn't ban me from his Facebook page. Call him, I don't know how many times. Where are y'all at? Where are y'all haven't gotten the TV and said nothing? Nothing? So y'all just sleeping peacefully. Whatever you're doing, you're safe. Meanwhile, me and my friends got butcher knives under our couches, and we can't sleep because we don't know what's about to happen. It's like, that's the part that we're still not talking about. How do we in this time feel safe? And then I'm not going to bring the picture up. I might show it on my phone. Remember when Dulal Eid was murdered, right? Do you remember? Let me pull it up here. Do you remember that picture that people were like, do y'all notice this truck with this flag? You remember? Can you see that? You can't really see it, but there's like this yellow flag over.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. The Don't Tread on Us flag.
Yeah, the Don't Tread on Us one. This one. And no one said nothing even about it. And that truck had been in the George Floyd Square area
Yep.
It's been going around the area. They were aware of it, which is how I, ended up getting
Yeah.
but we're
That flag belongs to the Oath Keepers, which is a group that I don't think that they have deemed a domestic terrorist group yet, but they work in conjunction with the Proud Boys and the moms that do the hold the line, and all of that. They all work together along with any other syndicate, whether you're talking about skinheads, neo-Nazis, KKK, all of those groups all share the same ideology, but they have a different perspective or thought process around how to carry out their hate. But they all hate, so that it's all one and the same. And that being in the vicinity, and they don't know that, how can y'all not keep up? They could have watched
right.
any of our feeds, and I know they were watching, because I had some of the mayor's staff calling me asking me if I had information to verify whether things were true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's my thing. Why are we not talking about that? They're still so afraid of those groups. They still trying to kiss ass to those groups. You know what I'm saying?
But where were the barbed wire? Where was the concrete barriers? Where were the fences? That went on for days, and then it ended like it was just some training exercise. What
Right.
happened to the FBI investigating MPD to look into any sources of supremacy? What's the update on that?
What is the update? That's what we want to know. We want to know, what is the update? That's my demand from this episode, because we never got any update. What's going on with that? I want to know specifically what y'all are doing about that part. Who's watching those groups?
Right. Why did the emergency broadcast system not come onto our phones and our televisions to say that 911 wasn't a thing anymore and we were on our own? Right. Why was Senator Torres Ray and Senator Hadan Hassan out there? And Hadan Hassan, representative, was pregnant at the time with water hoses, helping their constituents put out fires because Fry decided it was too dangerous for the fire trucks to come in. So you want to talk about fires? Well, we could have put them out, but you made a decision. And then as far as Walls is concerned, let's talk about that. They're waiting for direction to make sure that they don't overstep and misstep and say something different, because it's not their level of government. It's within their purview, obviously, because you can't have the major economic center of the state that provides the most revenue go down in flames. So certainly they still have responsibility, but he didn't communicate. Then he tried to blame Walls for the delay in bringing in the National Guard. And like he said, you have to ask for that. That's not a text. That is you know what I mean? That's not the mechanism of, like, you don't even know how to communicate. What's the difference between an emergent phone call, calling somebody's chief of staff, an email versus a text versus an in-person meeting? There is a mode of communication that is appropriate for the level of situation and what you are trying to convey. And if he's not texting what the governor already knows from looking on TV, that was not a formal request. And Walls acknowledged that publicly. There was still some bucking that was inappropriate, but ultimately, Fry is who is the mayor of this city, and it was in his purview. And for as much as he dogged Betsy Hodges, who I wasn't a fan of either, but as much as he dogged her and her leadership and all of that was involved, and Chief Harto being fired and all of that, and then he got up in there and did what? Worse.
Yeah.
Worse.
Yeah. And I don't... Because see, we start talking about Fry and all that, and I start going,
because it's just it's just such a serious problem. And talking about, we want answers, talking about, like, let's go back for a second. Let's go back for just a second to also remember that we don't have answers to the ketamine druggings for excited delirium, which the Association of Medical Doctors, I can't think of the actual name, it might be AAMA, but in anyways, that Association of Medical Doctors that they belong to does not recognize excited delirium as an actual diagnosis. And I believe it was Dr. Ho, no pun intended, over at HCMC, was not only one of the main doctors pushing that diagnosis that it's real, but also was the one that was authorizing the paramedics, in conjunction with the police who were requesting it, to drug people with ketamine, and people died. What was the result of that investigation? Are y'all still drugging people? Should we expect lawsuits from that? Who's responsible, the county or the city? The city was supposed to, there was some sort of investigation that was also supposed to happen at the county. Never got an update on that. What happened to the 1,500 rape kits that disappeared from MPD from the 90s forward, that reappeared? And they said they were going to prioritize them. How many of those have been processed out of the 1,500? Have those victims been identified? Are they pressing charges? And what is the outcome of that? What is the outcome of high-speed chase? Is not supposed to be a thing anymore. A high-speed chase happened today. Unclear whether MPD chased them or they were the only one high speed, but they got them over north. A police officer was ran over. A pedestrian was ran over and killed, and we're not supposed to be doing high-speed chases anymore. Was there a high-speed chase? Why are knees still putting on people's necks? How is it that Jalal Eid got killed when that was the first time that that community response team they put together of the most experienced officers had a bad informant? He didn't even have so much as a stick of gum in his pocket, let alone a gun. And then you go to his parents' house, terrorize them, don't tell them that their child is dead, terrorize them and children, claim that you treated them dignified when we saw the video and you didn't find any guns. So you went in on bad information from an informant, which is why I don't even think informants should be used in the first place. And somebody is now murdered as a result.
Right.
All of those things, and probably even then some that we don't even have time to think about or get into, we still don't have questions to. And literally for the last 2 weeks, we have had a serious incident involving law enforcement, if not every day, every other day. And so people can't even keep up with what's happening. There's confusion, there's anxiety, there is tension, there is trauma, and there are no answers. There are no guidance. It feels as if there isn't anybody in charge. The lights are on in City Hall, and it's questionable if anybody is home.
Right. Physically or here.
And in any way, in any shape or form, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, we don't know. Where are people at, and where do they stand on these issues, and why do they keep flip-flopping, adding more confusion? Are you defunding? Are you reallocating? Are you creating a new department? Are you creating a civilian police accountability commission like people are asking for, so we can have a voice in deciding what happens when these officers are out of line and out of pocket and out of touch with what their job is and who they're responsible to? Where are the answers? And then you add the charter commission business on that I touched on a little bit. There is more than enough going on to this city and no answers, and we just keep going from crisis to reactionary, crisis to reactionary. And they're worried about the public's reaction instead of worrying about the action that's leading to our reactions.
That's exactly what it is.
So it's like, where does it end? At what point? You say you believe in reforming, so at least do that. At least start reforming. What are you waiting for?
But like you said, what are you waiting for? So we have to have another George Floyd? Is it going to be a youth this time? Is it going to be, you know what I mean? We just saw the way they did our youth the other day. And if our youth, we can't even talk. Like I said, the conversation of safety is even hard to have when we're watching our youth being treated the way that they're being treated.
And they're not wearing masks, and they're going around infecting people. And nobody's giving us the answers to the numbers on how many cases have we tied back to officers talking all close in people's face and spits coming out of their mouth because they hollering and being belligerent because they refuse to wear a mask. What happened to the $1,000 fine or 2 weeks in jail? How come that doesn't apply to them? So they enforce the law, but they don't have to follow it, proving yet again that even when it comes down to masks during a pandemic and a mandatory mask mandate, that there are officers in large numbers that don't want to follow the law. In addition to, they refuse to give their badge number most of the time, and that's captured on film. They cover up their name tapes if they're wearing them at all, and they refuse to provide any information about who they are. So the only information you can get is the car number, which they should be able to tie to who was on shift. But that's not the way that it's supposed to be.
Right. Whew. So many things I could touch on with that, but I already got you on here for over an hour.
So where do we go? Where do we want people to go? What do we want them to do? What can we offer up? What can we do as a community? I think that's really kind of our end thought, right? Like, what do we know about people can take advantage of?
What can we do? So briefly, I feel like you got, Sam has all the tips. Samantha, like I'm talking like we're talking on thing, has all the tips. Has all the pro tips when it comes to safety and how we can keep each other safe. What I'd like to do is quickly, if you could talk, you kind of already talked about it really, but as far as your experience the last time, if you could briefly touch on what you had to do, what you and your community had to do, because the police weren't going to do it. I'm going to phrase it like that. Okay.
Yep.
Because this talks about how we already know the community can do it because we saw it. And if there was anyone, and that was what, even I wasn't in your area. You know
Let
what
me
I
turn on some light.
mean? Right. Okay.
Yep, we getting into sunset here. All right, there we go. I just realized, Mike, it feels like I'm talking in the dark because I am.
But so if you could talk about that, and then y'all, and it's so funny, y'all. I'm so sorry. I didn't even notice. Like I had like 17 comments over on the
snaps.
And I'm sorry, y'all. I'm a little bit new with this particular stream service. I'm usually in the, I'm used to the on-air thing. We don't usually get to see the comments and all that type of stuff.
I might set it up so your comments start scrolling across your screen.
Yeah. Sam, let's talk after.
Finally, because I knew the function. I played with it, so I will see, sister.
Okay. You see my face. I'm like, how do you do that?
Otherwise, I'd be like you. I wouldn't. I just get going.
I was 17. I was like, oh. So sorry, y'all.
Some of what was being asked.
Basically, go off, Sam. Speak on it.
Back. Is there an assay in there? Can I get an assay and amen? Is there one of those in there?
Yeah, they're basically, and I can't see all, but basically, yeah, stuff like that, like facts. So okay, we're talking about your experience was, and then if you could give some of your like pro tips to how people can stay safe. And if I think of any that I know that weren't mentioned, I'll throw a couple of mine in there that I think of that are mainly about like when you're out there protesting and stuff like that, but you'll probably say something anyway. So anyway.
Yep. I think it's applicable either way, which is like, first of all, take a base status of yourself. Where are you actually at? Are you in a space where you can be out there, right? With situational awareness, really have thought through what you're doing, who you're going with, what is the plan, what group are you going to follow, what events are you going to, are they credible, right? Is there somebody that you know personally that you trust that co-signs a particular group doing an event? So that way, even choosing what you're going to go out and do, if it's those things versus daytime or night or whatever it might be, just kind of doing an evaluation, right? But start at home as well. Do you have kids? Are you talking to your kids about what is happening, or are you brushing it off and not informing them? If they're old enough to get around on their own, be honest about those conversations so that you can ask them if they plan on attending and if they want to. And if that's not a thing you usually do, think about supporting your youth who want to be out there and experience what's happening. You don't have to stay the whole time. You don't got to go at night. You can go to a vigil. There are options. So take your kids so that they don't go out on their own and lie to you that they're going to the mall or doing something else. And they could potentially end up in a situation that they don't know how to handle because they're just amongst their friends with no supervision or direction. So super important. Don't buy all the toilet paper. Get something for a couple of days, just in case, if for nothing else, you're not in the mental space to want to be out dealing with people. Not because of the fear of it's going to go down or whatever, but just if it's for that. Get a couple of things for the week so you don't have to go out, right? Think about what you need to create space for yourself, whether that's sage or candles or baths or whatever the thing is for you to decompress and express yourself, art, music, whatever. Carve out that space too that you're going to need for yourself on a daily basis. Meditate, yoga, could be anything, bike ride. Make sure that you're thinking about your car. It's related and unrelated to things. Do you have gas in it? You got all your paperwork if you're gonna be out. If you're a person that's allowed to travel, should there be a curfew? Do you have your documents to prove that you're a person that can be out? Make sure you park in the garage if you can, because there's people stealing catalytic converters, which it's unrelated, but it could be other things. Stop leaving your cars running. It's warming up, but still people have automatic starters. Cars are being stolen with babies in the back.
Right.
So I know it's a pain when you got 3 of them in diapers and you forget something in the house and you got to go back in. I know it because I've been there. But don't take the risk, because many people did, thinking it's not going to be them, and it was them. So have a plan for that. If the buses stop running like they did last time, do you have at least a lift cushion of $25? So in the event you can't get home on a bus, you can get home if you work in the suburbs and someplace where it's not easy to, arrange for something else. Social media as well. Be cautious of what you're reading and how that affects you, where you're getting your news, fact checked everything. And also like have cybersecurity, because the city of Minneapolis itself got hacked and they lost control of their whole website and system, in case people forgot that happened. You can look into what that is. Safeguard your personal information. Maybe you have the signs out in your yard that have like support for your school, go Wildcats or whatever. If there's supremacists in the area, if they've identified that maybe a person of color or just somebody else that they would have some hate towards lives there, they now know where your kids go to school. So just through all the things you do in your normal day and think about what adjustments you have to make if you had to do things differently or if you didn't have access to something, and know where to reach out for trauma. Don't hold that in because it boils over. If you need Black competent care or other things, there's lots of different Facebook pages that are culturally specific that share those types of resources. But St. Stephen's has a wonderful resource list that has everything in the kitchen sink in it, from healthcare to trauma to emergency funds, all of that stuff. So it's really just a matter of being informed and talk to your neighbors. Yeah. Don't get panicked about, I ain't never seen that car before. Just look for something that sticks out, but it's an immediate danger. Maybe there is a tire in your back alley. You don't watch that alley that close to know if somebody put it there and they're gonna burn it, and now you're just creating fear for yourself and anxiety. Just keep a lookout. Tell your neighbors to keep a lookout. We already know that 911 is going to get clogged if a thing happens. We have this non-emergency number that nobody's going to memorize. So maybe we should plug it in our phone, even though we all feel some kind of way about having to call some other line, right? Or call 311, which, that is what it is. So just kind of like think about those types of things, but start at home and then kind of outward. Do what's comfortable, but also don't be afraid to find what I've been coining lately don't be afraid to find the beauty in your community. There are people out there. You are welcomed in these public spaces, despite what media and the city and other people are trying to tell you, creating this negative context around the word community. They feed in people, they resource in people, they're praying over people. There's music, there's dancing, there's art. There is an event for everybody. And the problem, like I said, you can't love thy neighbor if you don't know thy neighbor. So get out in community, find the beauty in your community, be a little bit uncomfortable, but the only way for us to know what's strange and what isn't is to get out in our community to know what is and what isn't. There's no reason anywhere that's going to do that for you. That's not new for us. I mean, I know your audience is diverse, but I also know it's a lot of us on the call and watching this. So that message might not be as applicable to us because we know that. But there are also some of us who have shied away from the movement or are confused about what it is. Some of us confused about Black Lives Matter, right? Like we're not talking about the organization. We could be. We're talking about our lives. And yes, we know all lives matter, but people are treated as if theirs don't. And that's it. That's all. And that needs to be a conversation that we keep talking about too. We have to own the narrative. And that's why local journalists such as yourself are so important, because you make sure that the real narrative is out there for us to be able to share and make sure that's another safety issue. When there's lies out there, these crime report pages on Facebook, stay away from them. They
my God.
They jump to their
those are the most racist pages.
Get away from those racist. Not take them as legitimate sources for news. If you want to listen to a scanner, listen to it your damn self. Hopefully I can say that. But listen to it yourself. There's a lot of just misinformation. And if you can't see it for yourself, find a source where you can see it for yourself without the commentary, or just take your behind down there and see for yourself and form your own opinion about what is and what isn't, so that you can continue to push the real narrative and not all these falsehoods and scarcity politics and just all of the mess that is happening. While we also have a dang election going on.
And that's the thing, we haven't even, I was just thinking about that. I was just thinking about that. They don't even know. They have no idea because we're so focused on all, and that was what I was thinking about with my own content. Like, we gotta start talking about that. You know what I mean? Because we're so wrapped up in this. And one thing that you mentioned that made me think, you brought police scanner. And that's one of the things with that, because I remember we were up. I remember we specifically had it up where we would be reporting from, I want to say it was like 10 p.m. it was probably earlier. It was probably like 9, and we would be up to like 4 a.m. And it was just me and my friend who happens to be able to understand the codes that they use in scam. See, that's the thing. Like a lot of times you'll listen to it, but if you don't know the codes and stuff, and it's so fast. So if you don't know how to keep up and you don't know the codes, you don't know what is going on. And so thankfully they knew the codes and they knew because of their line of work how to keep up with the calls. And so we were able to decipher it. But who really knows it? I was actually thinking about trying to create some type of doc that has like the common ones to kind of look for, to listen for, to be able to understand. Because I can't do it on my own.
You hear talking about Charlie Tango, that's not language that people are used to hearing. So even post that so people know what the military, alphabet is that they use for letters, that is helpful to know what people are talking about. And some of those Wilco means will comply. Roger that. Copy. Like those things actually mean real things. So I do think that like language is important. It's part of narrative. And so to figure out what's going on, I agree with you that those types of things are important, whether people do, whether they host a panel or however they choose to get that information out. I do think that would be valid and critical because that also helps to curb the misinformation because people don't know what the hell they're hearing or talking about.
Right. So note to self. Well, I mean, it's recorded now that I said I was going to do that. So
I'll help you. How about that?
Yes, that was gonna be my next. That was gonna be my inbox. So Sam, remember we were talking about that thing? I don't know. So real quickly, just a couple things, and I've said this before, so this might not be new, but one thing that you mentioned, there are people who are listening who are like knee deep in the fight, right? And there are a lot of people who are listening who aren't. You know what I mean? And a lot of people might be listening to me for the first time, right? Because this is on the uptake, and I haven't been on the uptake before, and so they might be hearing this. So one of the main things that I kind of talk about when I talk about like safety and stuff like that, actually, you touched on a lot of it. One thing that I talked to, that we kind of mentioned too, like with ride sharing services and stuff. This is more so for when I think about going to protests. As I tell people all the time to be weary of using rideshare services, like if you're going to a protest.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I remember a few years ago, I don't know if you heard about it. I want to say it's maybe in New York. I'm going to find the actual thing. This is like when I first became an organizer, I learned about this, where there are people who are like basically undercover cops, and they were, in Ubers and Lyfts and stuff like that, posing as Uber drivers, posing as Lyft drivers. And that was one of the ways they were finding out what the actions were. Because remember, it wasn't like how it is now where you had all these protests posted on Facebook.
Oh, to know.
We didn't post anything. Yeah, it was if you knew, you knew. If you knew, you knew. So a lot of this is coming from back then, the stuff I'm about to say, but it's still, I feel like we should still be sharing these practices now. I'm going to be weird about that because you don't know. You don't know who's picking you up, right? And in these particular situations, if you're going to an action, I feel like that's just even more risky because of the fact of like, you don't know if they're picking up because they're looking for people to pick up who are going that way. You just don't know. I think the key thing you talked about, the one thing that I didn't do and what I've been thinking about is especially like having a plan, having people that you can actually go to these actions with. That's one of the things that for me is always difficult a lot of times, because most times, especially, in media, you pop up on the scene, it's usually just you, right? Yeah. There's so many times when I am out there and I realize how small I am in comparison to the world in general. And it's usually those times when I'm on the street or if we're on the freeway, whatever. And I look up and realize how small I really am in comparison to, or I feel I should say, the forces that are out there against me, right? Yeah. So, and so it's like, it's a definitely a good thing, I think, to have that plan, to have like what I call like a protest buddy, if you have one, especially if you are someone where, let's say in a situation where, let's say you're on the freeway and, you shut down the freeway. How else would you be on the freeway?
Car broke down maybe.
On the freeway, right. But in the sense of a protest and you're on the freeway. And I remember thinking this, when we were on the freeway, it was the Breonna Taylor, it was when the announcement was made, no charges were going to be filed. We were on the freeway. And I remember they had barricaded it at this one exit, one of the main exits to go downtown. And I remember thinking, one, I didn't have anyone to give my phone to. There was nobody that I had to turn to who knew me, like who I felt not only knew me like that, but was paying attention. Because people who I knew were the people who were running the march. You know what I mean? They're not.
The support number on your arm, because that's another important thing to mention. Like,
What number?
The jail support phone number.
I don't. I should.
I usually have it memorized, but I haven't been out in a position to have to write it, have it the forethought. But I feel like it's 612-444-2567. But I could be off slightly, but
we'll verify it.
It's on Facebook. Lots of different people post it. Write it on your arm with a Sharpie. And to your point you were just making about like the lifts and all that. Also keep in mind that, well, I wouldn't say that being out is unsafe. And again, know what you're getting into. If something's popping off at night, that is a way different than things happening in the morning. And those demands, that is a choice. I'm not saying it's a good one or a bad one. I'm saying make the best decision for you. But if you're looking at an event and there's no demands listed, that's not something that is like a mobilizing type of event, right? Your organizing leads to your activism, leads to your mobilizing of actually like legislation or whatever it is to execute and get the thing done. If you're not seeing that, it's probably a different type of event. So just know what you're attending, keep in mind the time of day, and know that, well, most events are safe or take place under conditions that tend to be more safe, daytime and things like that.
Right.
Don't know who else is there. Umbrella Man and all these different people. The person standing next to you may speak the same lingo. They're dressed similarly to you, but you do not know them.
And I've learned that the hard way. I've learned that with, we talked about media and stuff. I've learned that the hard way, not knowing I'm right next to Alpha News or I'm right next to whoever. And they'll be out there and they'll talk to you.
They will.
They know the lingo. Yep. And you'll realize it later, like, oh,
yeah. And you ain't got no business to talk to media. You're not obligated to give the opinion of somebody that lives here because you don't know who they are. And if you feel compelled to speak, ask for their credentials and make sure that they're where they're from. Because if they're press, have a press badge. So ask people for their credentials, which is, I think, another really important thing to name. And if you're a person that wants to go out, even if you're going out at night, that's not for a protest reason, you can have mace and they sell it in the store. It's not illegal to have a knife, but if they stop you, they could find a reason to do something about that. If you have your conceal and carry, that's also your business. If you're choosing to carry a weapon and you don't have it, that's also your business. But one important thing to note is for people that have been going out to get flak vests, especially if they have the actual pieces inside of them, because some protection on its own, but not without the plates. But if you are in a flak vest and you commit a crime, even if the crime's being committed against you and you're just responding and whatever, if you are involved in a crime, could even be that they call for a dispersal order, right? And you choose not to leave. So now you're going to be arrested. You have now committed a crime, and it is now a felony charge that you will potentially have and likely will have on you because you're wearing that flak vest. So that's another thing to be aware of.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And know when to fold them, because there is no individual action that is going to be the thing that leads us to liberation. So know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and be aware of what it is that you're trying to do. What is the outcome you want and what you're trying to accomplish? Because we need y'all outside. I'm not saying there's not situations where you don't deem it worth to get arrested or it just happens and you weren't expecting it. But just be clear with yourself about what it is you're trying to do. And if you know that you are arrestable, which is the way that we refer to it, you're willing to get arrested, who's going to take your phone? Who's going to take your wallet? What family member do you want to be called? What do you have in your book bag? Who do you want to pass that off to? And that all needs to be named and figured out beforehand, to include, if we get separated, friend, buddy, crowd I'm with, who is going to, where are we going to meet? What is the plan? We're going back to the car. And remember where you parked your car.
Girl, I had that happen one time. I went to an action. I was not familiar with the area like that. I hopped out so quick. They had already started marching. So, I hopped out the car. when I tell you, when it got time to go, I was looking around, and I'm not gonna lie, I was scared. I didn't show it, but I was scared because I didn't know anybody. The people that were doing it are people who I didn't normally go to their protests and stuff, so I knew of them, you know. And I remember, and then there was a white guy that had shown up who was trying to, start some mess or whatever. So it was dealing with that. And in that moment, everyone's leaving, and I can't find my car. And it dawned on me so many things in that moment. I'm Black. I'm a woman. I don't have something or someone bodyguard with me, and now I don't know where the hell my car is. And I got this white supremacist over here. Like, it was all those things that made me start thinking, like, I can't do this again. And it was by the grace of God that I just happened to turn and see a family friend who was out there, not for a protest. They were just out there. Mm-hmm. And they were like, do you need a ride to your car? And I knew that was God. I was like, because he knew that had no idea. Yeah. And it's things like that that sound so small that are a huge deal. I mean, imagine how I would have looked walking around by myself. Anything could happen.
I had that happen because, again, it was the heat of the moment. Things were happening. All these things. We parked the car. We were together, 3 of us. Started raining, and then it got dark, and things went funky, and none of us could remember where we parked. So I have a tip. If you're a person that doesn't turn off their location, Google tracks. If you asked for directions to get to where you were going anyway, so do that. If you go back in your history on Google in Maps, it will show you where your last location was, or you can pull up the last set of directions to help you remember where you parked. That was how we literally found it. It was nowhere where any of us thought that it was.
Yeah.
So I didn't think about that. Just came to me in the moment of like, okay, think about this, Sam, that like there's got to be a way. So that was how I figured that one out. So that is a tip you can use. Unless you're one of those people that feel like your location being on is not wise. And if you're one of those people that's going to go out at night and you're arrestable and you bout that life, that's a different situation of turning off your location and all of that. But if you're just going to be part of community and see what's going on, nobody's checking for you. Ain't nobody tracking you, and you ain't been under surveillance. Surveillance is real. COINTELPRO is real. I'm not trying to minimize that. But just for the everyday regular Joe, don't let yourself go down the rabbit hole, because you can and will freak out. And then the last suggestion I have, that at a well-oiled and organized rally or event of some sort, there are people there to keep you safe. When they tell you to stay behind the banner and to
stay behind the damn banner,
listen, wear your mask. You can walk distance. Make sure that you're also following the direction. There's usually the folks out on their motorcycles. There's a couple different groups that do it to bring up the sides and the rear. I call them road guards because of my military background. That's what they call them. And I can't think of the name that they call themselves right now. They're not guards and they're not ushers. That's how you know. Ushers.
You talking about the marshals?
The marshals. Thank you.
Oh, I feel very safe with the marshals.
I was thinking about
but when they're not there.
But yes, them. Yeah. They keep you safe. They block traffic. They make sure cars aren't trying to do a weird thing. They're on bicycles. They're on foot. They're well labeled. There's medics there as well. They are well labeled. So if you don't bring your own little medical kit, and they're nurses and other medical professionals for the most part, or people that have first aid training that do that. So you have resources right there on site. So even if you lose your car, they're going to walk with you and help you find it. You lock yourself out of your car, whatever happens, any situation, make sure that you reach out to one of them, because that's literally what they're for. And so that's kind of my last big piece of advice, and kind of just navigating all of these different things that will be going on. And Monday the trial starts. So, take care of yourself this weekend. Be good to yourself, be gentle, still find some, beauty in your community, but just, think through what you need and listen to your body. And none of us can do this alone. None of us wear a cape, and none of us are saviors. There's nothing that you as an individual that you choose to not go that day or take a week or 2 weeks. Nobody is judging you. You do not have to be everywhere. It has no bearing on your contribution to what's being done. And if somebody thinks it does, well, you don't need it. Oh, well. Right. You control you. You can't control other people or situations, but you certainly can control you and where you put your body and how you choose to use it. So don't feel pressured or guilted by people that you have to be everywhere, every day, every time, because you have to sustain yourself as well. If we're going to be part of this marathon.
That's how I burned out last time. I'm like, I feel like you talking to me.
I'm talking to myself too, because I resigned from my job as a result of other things. Don't get me wrong, but I was not an executive director after what I experienced and the trauma that I went through as an individual. And that's how I started doing consulting in the first place, because there was a need in community for this, and I needed to just do this for myself on my own time and create my environment, and step into my vocation and purpose further than what I had. So these things are real, and they affect you in very profound ways. And lean on your community elders. They might not be able to get out there no more like that, but they certainly have wisdom to impart. A lot of them are very spiritual, like Elder Amake or Sister Daniela Headington. They provide that spiritual help. So reach out to those resources as well for the non-traditional feeding of your soul too. And they're not the only ones. There's lots of Sister LaDonna Redmond. There's a lot of different Black sisters that are out there providing that filling of your cup, and that spiritual that you need. So lean in on those resources too.
You will literally not survive this. I mean, you can survive it, but you're not going to be at the capacity that you could. I mean, that was the thing I learned the hard way. Jumped in, full throttle in May, had no didn't know that I was going to be, how was I going to put it? As far as with this media stuff, I wasn't planning on being up on, all that type of stuff. So I had no really, we're going to do this. This is how you do it. It's trial and error. And now I'm like, I will never, ever do that again, because I'm still recovering from that. I'm still recovering from it. And it completely burnt me out, because I'm a type of person that feels like I have to be everywhere. It feels guilty if I'm not there. I think, what would people think if I'm not showing up here and there? I deal a lot about that. Couple things. It's a Capricorn thing. I know.
We're being Capricorns, just so everybody knows we are being Capricorns. But yeah, I got to check myself and reel myself in and be like, I'm not getting out of bed today. I don't have to, and I deserve that. And I can turn off my phone, because I am not responsible to hold all of this weight on my own. To your point, right? Like feeling your size, not like feeling like you're tiny, but just understanding that you exist within an ecosystem of ecosystems, locally, countywide, statewide, national, global, and universally, right? We are a piece of a collective. And so we do our part as part of that collective and ecosystem. And we do what we can when we can. We don't owe anybody any more or less than that. As long as we walk in the knowledge of the footsteps of our ancestors, and we continue to follow the North Star, we're going to lead ourselves to liberation, because nobody's going to lead there but us. And if we're tired and we walk up and we're doing too fast, we won't be there in the ways that we all need each other to be there in. So remember, and like we both said, don't get guilted about it. You deserve to be good to yourself.
And that's especially just as Black women, not something that we typically, is something that's ingrained in our minds. You know what I mean? Of what we deserve to be good to ourselves. So I wanted to just give just a couple tips, and then we'll wrap it up, piggybacking off what you said with like having your location services on, because I know when you said that, I was like, I know a lot of times it's tricky. Yeah, with an organizer, that's the one thing we typically don't want on. But one thing you mentioned with the car thing, I want to go back to that, because I didn't even think about the fact that I forgot that I noticed on my phone when I park, and I'll be walking away and it will give me an alert that says parked car here, but I didn't think about it at the time. I was like, for me, I was looking at it as a tracking thing, like my phone tracking my car, like in that way, and then I didn't think about it until you said it now, like, oh dang, I didn't even realize that's actually helping me, because situations like that, and to be able to go where I park my car, and to be able to look at it that way, because that happens. I mean, these actions are everywhere, so you're going everywhere you don't know. So with the location services, for people who don't know maybe why folks wouldn't want to have that on. So when I was becoming an organizer, that's one of the things I was taught, as far as it's all about tracking, you know what I mean?
And being aware of your surroundings, all surroundings at all times.
And so as an activist or organizer, a lot of times you want to kind of cut that off, as far as being able to be tracked every single place you go. Or because a lot of times too, it'll pop up on Facebook. If you have that on, it'll say, oh, such and such you're in, for me, Woodbury, you're in Minneapolis, what have you. But also so that I can't remember what the exact setting is that you turn off. so that your pictures don't have the date and time. So like, for example,
go into your, like, well, if you have an iPhone, but because I haven't had an Android in a while, but it's basically all the same. If you go into settings, you can turn off and on location services for individual apps,
right,
as a whole. But if you go into like phone or messages or whatever, the settings for each of those individual things lie between picking those things individually. So you do need to go through all of them, but also use a VPN.
That's what I was trying to get at. Thank you. That's
some of them are free up to a certain amount of bandwidth per month. So like Windscribe is one of them, for example. It's the one I use. But just get a VPN so that if there's a reason that you have a need to keep those things on, you have like that firewall. So that is another option that you can use if you have those types of concerns. And like I said, there's a lot of them that are free. And ask your kids how to use technology.
Right.
They know.
Because they know.
Tell them what you want. If you don't want to learn yourself, let your grandkids, your kids, they know how to use this technology like it is nothing. I ask my kids all the time.
They need to be
my phone and bring me my.
We talking about help, and this is like kind of off topic. When we talking about things as far as helping the disparities in our communities, that's one of the ways they can give all these young folks jobs. Give them jobs doing all this tech stuff.
It's job
consultants. They're doing this stuff just because it's, they know they're growing up on it. Give them some jobs and see what that will do. But that's what I was trying. I could not think of a VPN. Thank you. I could not think of it. I'm like, okay, I know it's this, I know it's that. And a lot of this is coming from, for me, kind of the way that I learned it is kind of like what to do so you don't get, like if you get arrested. You know what I mean? If you get arrested out there, what to do. One of the main things, also tips that I give people, it's to, in this, if you're like a lot of organizers and stuff, if you're out there, you probably noticed already, but to not have your touch ID on your phone, like your face ID, touch ID, face ID thing. Because if you're arrested, right, let's say your hands are behind your back, right? It's nothing for them to come, take your phone, have you touch it or put it in front of your face. Now they're in your phone and all your information, which is another reason why I say, we were talking about having a protest buddy, someone you can give all those personal belongings to. So it's not even an option, but just also so they don't get destroyed or take, stuff.
Yeah. Look through it.
All those things. Yeah. So you want to have that.
Turn off your face recognition in case someone phone to your face. So just have the password on and don't make it obvious, like your birth date or your address with some zeros on it. Like for real, pick something that nobody would be able to figure out. For those protections, again, for those, it depends on what you're doing.
Right. And Signal. I forgot that. Apps like Signal, encrypted apps like that. I don't even.
Wait, no, Telegram, Viber. That's another one.
And also too, you don't have to use your real name in that stuff. That's what I realized. I had a situation that happened. It was a Signal group situation, and someone. It's all gone now, but someone had gotten arrested or possibly arrested, right? We didn't know. And so we shut the whole, thing down.
Yep.
What was funny is I forgot that I had my name, not my name, in there. And so I forgot when I had gone to the site to meet with some organizers, and I pull up forgetting that this whole time they've been talking to me. They don't know. And I'm like, yeah, I'm such and such. They're looking at me like, who? Like, I'm like, oh, right, in the group. But someone had told me that, like, you don't have to use, because in that particular situation, I didn't even know who I was. You're going in, like you said, with the assumption that you're in this and everyone's on the same page, but you don't know who's in there. And I remember it coming out later, like, oh, that group, they're actually with this such and such, I don't want to say the group because they've already been put in a bad light and it's not, but they're just deemed as a radical kind of group, right? Was picking up a lot during the uprising. Sorry with an A. Leave it at that. Okay. So I had no idea, who was in this group until everything came out. Like, you was in there, such, and and I'm like, what? And my thing is, like, I had my name coded just because someone had told me that. Like, you don't have to, because you don't know a lot of times who's in there. You don't know who's taking what. You still don't know. Anyone could be showing anyone anything.
Yeah,
it's different if you're with your friends, but if you're in there in a collective, whatever group, code that. It's just taking every single measure you can possible. Because at the end of the day, even, okay, last thing too, even if, let's say, like, we're talking about people who Damien, I'm gonna have to read yours when we get, because you saying, okay, yeah, I gotta read some, but
well, know when to use your communication, like we were saying earlier, right? If it's all like that, maybe you need to have an in-person conversation and stop trying to, you know what I mean, navigate a whole deep thing that needs to be sorted out on a text, which is just, that's not the best mode, right? So just like think about what you're trying to say, what the reasons of why you might not want to do that, and just pick the best mode of communication. It might just be old school, meet me in my backyard.
Right. And like I would, and this is my last thing. Well, I think the assumption a lot of times nowadays, particularly, is that if you're out at these protests, that you're not worried about being seen, right? Which I know is 100% false, because of people, I've been out there and people not wanting to have their pictures and stuff like that. But it's not something that is obviously not always easily controllable, right? Because I mean, nowadays everyone's out there, you're streaming or whatever. But or you have the drones and stuff like that. One of the things too, though, if you're trying to still to be out there but kind of fly under the radar still somehow, don't wear clothing that makes you stand out. Wear clothing that is going to, like, don't wear stuff like I wear. Don't wear stuff like this, even though it's bomb.
Or heel, and you trying to walk 4 miles, and you know what I mean, you got the club fit on, you don't got your coat, you ain't got no raincoat, like, just considerations too. That's real, right? Are you comfortable? Can you run in what you got on?
No. No.
I ain't judging nobody, you.
No.
Well, you're doing you.
Those things too, right? Like you said, though, if you have to run, when I was on the freeway, I had to climb this big old hill when we saw the police, and I remember thinking, am I going to be able to climb this hill in time to get up there before they come down and arrest me? Like, am I going to be able to, you know what I mean? In that particular outfit, yes. But, and what I had on my last protest, no. But yeah, so if you don't want to be all captured on stuff, like, we're like inconspicuous, or clothing that's going to kind of blend in. Maybe you're just wearing black. Maybe you're wearing, I mean, nowadays, the nice part with the mask, you can really blend and hide, whatever. So that's just for people who are like, I don't want to be on this, I don't want to be on that. It's pretty hard to prevent that nowadays. So if that's the case, whether you want to wear your hat or whether you want to wear whatever, don't wear things that stand out. Because I know I've had people who have come to me and have been like, Margaret, can you take, I didn't share this before, but I'll share it, and I'm not going to say the people, but I've had people come to me and say, can you take this part out of your live? Or can you take this, whatever, because my name is in it. And I've had these people from these alt-right groups and stuff like that contacting me, whatever. I've taken lives fully down, because I was like, there's no way that I can really take it out. But because I care, I'll just take the whole live down. It's not worth, you know what I mean?
Like safety, yeah.
It's not worth all that. So, but I've had that happen before. So yeah, people do pay attention to all those streams and stuff like that. So, so I hope that a lot of the things we got to come up with, Doc. There's so many things. I didn't put it up here, but I actually had a printout of like all the different type of flags and stuff, people to look out for. We talked about that, the yellow flag, what it say, don't tread on me, or whatever that says. But there were so many that came out that we didn't know, like that nobody, I had no idea who the Boogaloo, none of that was.
3%, all that. There's
who none of them were. And a lot of people thought that people were coming out and they were all on the same side. It's like, oh, everyone's coming together. It's all. And then you realize, like, nah, they was standing by, and they took advantage of this opportunity. And it was, but they know how to camouflage stuff. They know. They know.
Tactical. They've as organized as, we're not the only ones that know how to organize ourselves.
No.
We're often not weaponized.
Not.
And they always are, pretty much. So
right. But we're the ones that get watched the most.
That's another reality. And we know that they'll use it. Right. The officers even too, right? They drop that Blue Lives Matter real quick. So they'll
Blue Lives Matter.
They won't even
the Capitol right
together to talk about the collective decision they want to make. They right on the spot started stomping on that, and that was their whole main fake guys are pretending they're not racist. We just believe supporting cops. Well, we already knew you did it, and now you exposed yourself, and thank you kindly.
Blue Lives Matter killed a cop, so please explain that to me. Please explain that. But so on that note, one, I just want to say that I remember when I first advertised my season premiere episode, I said it was going to be 2 hours. And we achieved that.
We did. We totally did.
Still good. But I want to talk about
this for a minute. He came like, what you doing? My husband. And I was telling him I'm on the show. He was like, you ready to go? And I was like, I'm on the show. He came all the way right here, y'all, was like, what? That's why I did like this. And then I started smiling like quasi inappropriately because me and my husband were having a typical moment.
But it's all good. It's all good. That's what.
So Black love, I can't complain.
No, exactly. And now, on a positive note, to end off with, to segue from that positive note, you have an event tomorrow. T was saying we cannot get off of here without talking about that and where that's going to be. I know it's going to be at one of my favorite places. I know that.
Yes. So tomorrow, it's a monthly event that I'm doing. I'm going to travel to different, mostly Black, but local owned restaurants and businesses. And it's not that they're endorsing me in any way, but I'm supporting local business. I'm going to sit in there. I'm going to pay for my meal and encourage people to order. So tomorrow's is Sammy's, whether you live on North or Northeast or wherever you live, go get it. You can pick it up or you can order it. Please order from Sammy's Eatery. Amazing food. And that's where I'm starting. He has his second restaurant in Northeast where I live, in Ward 1 where I live. So I think it's a beautiful thing to go and do that. Plus the food is bomb, as we know. Veganista, Black-owned female right next door. If vegan is your thing, you could order from a Black-owned female restaurateur, the Veganista right next door. But Tea with Sam is a concept because that is literally what I do, but it's not gossip. The tea that I give is from my perspective of working at City Hall and keeping up with politics and current events in our city in relation to economic justice and this board seat that I'm running for. So it is an hour of getting the public tea that we should all know, but in ways that are constructive. So I encourage people tomorrow at 2:00. It'll be on my campaign page on Facebook. It is Sam for BET or Bet on Sam on Twitter and Instagram as well. So you can find the event link there. And if you want to follow, which please do, contribute however you can. Follow, read the newsletter, read the blog. I have resources up there of all different kinds. Donate, absolutely. We have people to pay fairly, and we got a whole city to get lit and whatnot out to. Share it with your friends. Host a virtual fundraiser and info session. There's so many ways to get involved, but sharing is a real good way that doesn't cost anything to just make sure that we get the word out about a seat that it's obvious they would prefer that we don't know about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hope to earn your trust and your vote as what I believe I am a first choice candidate for this seat because we have ranked choice voting. If you go to SAM, SAM4 FOR, B as in boy, E as in echo, T as in tango, like BT, like Black Entertainment Television. That helps you remember. So you can get all the tea and all the things and the information to be an informed voter. And if you're the type that doesn't vote, you still need to be informed. And so I love and appreciate y'all, especially the Black women that are standing up against all the things that we're facing as we continue to use our voice to speak truth to power, and also to take truth to action. And not just our words, but our actions as well. So I really appreciate it. And the support has been great. But we want to keep it up and we want to make sure that we get our voice in there, a voice that is out in community authentically, that actually does want to build community and stop tearing it down and being divisive. And I'm not running with the political party because neither one of them or any of them do anything for us, for anyone. Which is why we have our conditions. So I'm running independent of any party. And the only endorsements I want is from the people. So if that's your contribution, you want to say why you support and submit a photo, I would love that as well. There's a form on our website. And just get involved and support your candidates and get informed, but definitely support your Black candidates that are really about this and have a proven track record of not just showing up, but delivering with outcomes that actually lead to something that allows for us to thrive and positive and build generational wealth and health.
Yes, absolutely. And that's so funny that you mentioned the with the picture thing, because I was looking, I saw someone had someone did an endorsement and I was like, how do I do that? I want to do one. I'm like, how do I officially, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
we're pushing out a lot of stuff this weekend to include a new newsletter, a new blog post. Like, we have a lot of stuff popping. And if you know me even a little bit, this is my space. This is what I love. I'm a person of service. I'm a woman of community. So of course I am for community. And that's just what I love, not because I have a cape or because I have ambitions to do other things. This is my focus and priority right now, and that's the only thing I want to focus on. I don't have any plans to do anything else but to focus in this moment on what we need to do for us, and to do it in a way that is just. It's not even a matter of right or wrong, but to make sure that it is just and that it is equitable and it's palpable, and it actually leads to us being able to do all the things that we've been paralyzed from doing, from the divestment from us and our communities.
yeah. Well, ain't that the perfect way to wrap up this conversation? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, especially because we've been talking about this for a while, you know, and I was like going back and forth, and I was, you know, trying to figure out the timing for this time. It was just a lot, you know, and then it all came together today. I feel like in my mind, I was like, no, we're doing this today.
And support Miss Margaret.
Yes. Support
like,
me.
share, donate, make sure that we're our sisters for their labor. So please, besides, you know, that this platform I have literally at this moment on the first one out the gates, which I just can't say enough how much happy, you gotta support Miss Margaret. So please do make sure you share it and pump our sister up because she deserves it. And we need to give her back everything that she gives to us, no doubt.
Thank you so much, Sam. Yes, support me. This was established 2016. Okay. We've been at this for some years now. So make sure you guys support. Follow my fan page, Miss Margaret Live on Facebook. For those who are watching on the Uptake and don't follow, just my page. Make sure you go do that and invite your friends to follow too. You can go to the community tab on the page. It'll hit invite all friends and send them to be a part of the village. I post, if you're watching my personal page, I've been posting most of my new stuff on Miss Margaret Live. So, you know, if you follow Miss Margaret Live, to me, it's like the TMZ of community. Like we just got just everything, just anything we want. It's all there. So go to the Facebook page, margaretlive.com. I mean, Miss Margaret Live, the .com will be coming soon. That's what I was thinking about. That website will be coming soon. So, you know, we're evolving, expanding, you know, all type of stuff. So thank you all for joining me for my first episode of Miss Margaret Live on the Uptake, taking it up a notch.
That's right.
So I'm getting a lot of things together, just trying to figure out studio wise, all that type of stuff. But I'm really happy to be on the Uptake. I definitely know that was one of the best decisions that I made this past year. Probably the best that I've made this year so far. Was really taking that leap of faith and coming to the Uptake. And I'm just so glad, because had I not left my previous situation, this wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? A lot of times we stay in things because we think it's like, it's all we got. We're comfortable in it. We're stopping ourselves from our real blessings and opportunities. And that's what I realized. As soon as I let the toxicity go, all of a sudden, the Uptake, you know, was in my email. And it was amazing. And I felt like that's how I knew that, okay, you made the right decision. So thank you all. I'm really happy to be on the Uptake. I've already been doing reporting work and stuff for them. We did the conference, the press conference with the governor, which if you've been following me, you know that was like a goal of mine to be able to talk to him and invite him on my show. Oh, and just a little quick note, my little ghost consultant. One of the people I consulted about that, you know, like I really want to make sure I gotta hit him with it. Like I gotta come hard. You know, what are you thinking? What kinds, you know? So it's just like, it's all about having in this realm, and I'll leave it at this. It's so important to have that village. You know what I mean? And those people you can go to and who you can who support you and who you also support. You know, and so I'm grateful to have people that I know who are organizers and activists and stuff who I can turn to and stuff, who have been in this longer than I have, deeper than I have. And so I really rely on people like yourself for your knowledge. Every time you go live, I'm like, what's Sam talking about? Let me see what she's talking about. All right, no, she's talking about some shit. Let me see.
Always gonna be relevant. That is for
always.
sure.
You went live earlier, and I was like,
unadulterated truth, because we don't have any time for half truths, lies, or fronting. We got to tell it like it is. We got to move forward like we have a purpose and with urgency. We don't have time for the games. So if it comes from me, it's going to be what it is.
Period. I was just looking for a way to say period. I just want to find a way.
Right. Period, point, full stop. I said what I said. That's it.
That's it. And that's where we're leaving it at. So tomorrow, Sammy's 2:00, Tea with Sam.
Yep.
Pull up.
Do the virtual thing and order in Sammy's and tune in. It will be good. We'll be talking about some pretty interesting things with bonding and how that works and affects us, and gentrification and how that all ties in. So you don't want to miss it.
A lot of things that people don't know about, or people know about, or people living it and don't know about. So it's definitely something to tune in for. So thank you all for tuning in to Miss Margaret Live. I'm so used to saying every Friday night at 6:00. And right now I'm not quite sure. I mean, I'm not sure. I might, take back over Friday nights. I don't know. I haven't really decided yet, but you'll know soon as far as my regular schedule when this will be. So anyway, y'all, thank you for tuning in to the season premiere. Have a great weekend. And I hope that all this stuff that we talked about today really helps everyone, and to sit down and kind of figure out what is your safety plan.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about not just physical safety. I think that's one of the great things that you brought up, was it's also about mental, emotional, all that type of stuff as far as what keeps us safe and makes us feel safe. That's the stuff that we need to be looking at as far as how we're going to get through these next weeks, months, what have you. So thank you all for tuning in. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.